Well, we've got the case that came out of my county, which was just a few weeks ago, and then we've got the nationwide, the national story that just happened in Sacramento last week, which was a guy named David Funston, who was the serial child. He raped 7 children, kidnapped them off the street. He would lure children into his car with Barbies and candies and toys, as young as 3 in one case. And he would take them off into the woods and assault them and torture them and rape them and then let them go. He was convicted in Sac County, so my neighboring county, sentenced to 2 life terms plus 30 years. Victims were told he would never get out, he would die in prison. And last week, the victims, we all learned, the nation learned that California has this law called the Elder Parole Law. And the Elder Parole Law says that if you are in a state prison and you are over the age of 50, you're considered
50?
elderly. 50.
That you can't even retire at 50. I have electrician friends that are 52 still doing work.
It's insane. You can't get Social Security until you're 62, but to get out of prison early, the Elder Parole Law says if you're 50 and you've served at least 20 years of your sentence, you can be considered for this elder parole. And the decision on who gets out is made by the Board of Parole Commissioners. And these people are all appointed by the governor. They serve at the pleasure of the governor.
Well,
and, that's where we are right now.
Well, it's funny because Gavin Newsom's press office is trying to run cover for him right now. So, Eric Doherty, he posts, it's official, Gavin Newsom is facing calls to resign his office because because of his elderly parole program, about to dump a child, blah, blah, blah. And then his press office comes out and says, the Board of Parole Hearings is an independent agency and made this decision. The governor asked for them to review its decision. The governor doesn't agree with the outcome and has no authority to reverse the independent decision per state law. And then somebody claps back at him and says, well, you signed back in September of 2020, you signed Assembly Bill 3234, which allowed this program to go forward. And, it's just the same thing. It's just the same gaslighting from Gavin. 50 years old is, how can you not be considered a threat at 50 years old anymore? Joe Rogan, who can kick both of our asses probably at the same time, is like 52 years old. And yeah. I know ultra marathon runners that look like they're in their 30s that are in their 60s. So how could this guy not be a threat anymore? How did this happen, this bill?
Yeah, it's a crazy story. It actually this law goes back to about 2016, I believe, is when it first came to be. And the author of the law, the elder parole law at that time, was Shirley Weber. You recognize that name?
Yeah, the Secretary of State. I ran for state senate and I got audited. I raised 10 grand. My opponent raised like 1.2 million and I got audited. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. What did Shirley Weber have to do with this?
Well, she was the original author of this elder parole law. And at that time, when she authored it, it only applied to people over the age of 60 who had served 25 years of their sentence. And then a few years later, there was an amendment filed by Assemblymember Ting, who I believe is out of the Bay Area, if I'm not mistaken.
What a shocker.
And that lowered it to the age of 50 with 20 years served. Now, here's the thing about the law that's crazy. It applies to murderers, kidnappers, human traffickers. There's very limited exclusion in this law. The only things that are excluded are death penalty, life without the possibility parole, cop killers, and then certain 3 strikes cases. But otherwise, everything is eligible. And this is where California is different than every other state in the nation, because there are other states that have an elder parole law, but nobody goes as far as California does in allowing child and murderers to be released early. And our age is also one of the lowest in the country. So It's a double whammy. But Newsom signed it into law. So this is where, the buck stops with him. This is 100% on Newsom. The Democrat supermajority gave him a bill in 2020 that expanded elder parole, that dropped the age to 50, and did a couple other things, and he signed it. He could have vetoed it. He could have said, I don't agree with this law. No, he signed it. And then, as you know, he appointed all these parole commissioners. Every single parole commissioner works at will for the governor. He could fire him like that.
So this is directly Gavin Newsom's responsibility. This
100%. Yeah, his efforts to, or his press guy's efforts to shift the blame on this is an absolute. It is gaslighting. It's him.
Well, it's stuff like this why, like, the rest of the country has to see this, but Californians are so blinded. They just, I don't know why, but he gets caught repeatedly in lies, and he just dances his way around them. And like, the absurdity of this law, it almost makes you like, are they on the side of criminals? Because you've got stuff like this, like kidnappers, child murderers being able to be released at 50 years old. And then you see them going after people for the pettiest crimes, and they'll have to get severe penalties all the time. And then meanwhile, you've got, like, there's the famous clip of Chesa Badine talking about, and I'm sure you've seen this clip. I don't know who he was interviewing with, but he talks about how, yes, there's drug dealers on the streets of San Francisco. They're here from Honduras. They were trafficked here, and we essentially have to let them deal drugs here, because if they don't send money back to their families, then they're going to kill their families. And like that, he was really like, that was his point, that we kind of like have to let them do it. And I mean, when you say this stuff out loud and really point out, like specifically like you just did, 50 years old, you've served 20 years of your sentence. Even if you're a rapist, a kidnapper, or a murderer, you're eligible for this program. I'm having a hard time not making any wood chipper jokes right now. Like,
well, it's fair. In a lot of states, Florida, Idaho, they've actually made child a death penalty eligible offense.
It should be.
It should be. I agree.
I mean, I'm like pro-life, and I oftentimes like to think that I'm against the death penalty. But I mean, when you do things like you said too, this particular guy that we were talking about, he pushed the girl. Didn't he pull the gun on her, pull the trigger, but it jammed too?
So that's my case. So
I'm mixing them up.
We have two separate cases, but they're all the same. It's the same elder parole law. So in my situation, we had another child in my county in a little town called Winters, which is a up and coming wine area. Yeah. And this guy was the stepfather for this little girl. And he began to her when she was about 7 years old, and he her for years and years and years, beat her, tortured her, ultimately impregnated her. And then he tried to induce a miscarriage by pushing her off buildings, pushing her out of trucks. At one point, she says that he pointed a gun at her head and pulled the trigger, and it misfired. She went into a DMV with her mom one day when she was a teenager. He'd been her all along, and she passed out, and they rushed her to the hospital, and that's where they found she was pregnant. And then she admitted what had happened. They arrested him, and he ultimately confessed to the crime, and he was sentenced to 130 years in prison, 139 years in prison. And the victims were told that he would die in prison and never get out. Well, along comes elder parole, and they granted him parole.
So he's out.
This woman, he's due to be released. Yeah. What they do is the Board of Parole hearings conducts the hearing. They issue their opinion on the release. CDCR then sets the date. So like this guy Funston, the other one we're talking about, the serial child out of Sacramento County, he's due to be released tomorrow.
Well, I mean, he's got a target on his back. Like, so what happens when you're released on parole? What type of restrictions will he have?
Well, they'll say he's going to be supervised by a parole officer. and that, they will do random checks on him, that he'll have to live in an environment that they believe is safe for the community. But in my experience, almost all of that is BS. Once these guys, who are all sociopaths, most are psychopaths, get out, they know how to manipulate the system. They've been in prison. They know how to play every single game to get away with whatever they can. And so a parole officer, they're not living with them 24/7. They check in randomly, etc. So, I'm convinced, and every one of my colleagues, sheriffs, police chiefs, everyone I've talked to is convinced that these guys are going to reoffend. They're pedophiles, and they're prolific pedophiles. And you don't cure it. You can't cure that. It's a disease. In fact, this guy that's being released out of Sacramento, Funston, the national story, we reviewed the testimony that he gave to the parole board in a previous hearing. And just within the last few years, he's admitted that he still masturbates frequently to little children in his mind. So he's admitted it, and they're going to release him.
So, two questions. How can these appointed parole commissioners, how do they justify this? Do they have to give a reason, like the Supreme Court does when they come to a decision? Do they have to give like a written reason? Like what is going through their heads? How can they possibly justify this to the public?
Yeah, the law is really squishy, but the way the penal code is written, the elder parole law, it was codified into a statute. And if you read it, it basically says that the elder parole commission, or the parole commissioners, need to examine the inmate's history, their code of conduct while incarcerated, the crimes, and they need to consider all of it and make a determination whether or not the inmate poses an unreasonable risk of harm to the community, whether he can be safely released. And it's super squishy. And so depending on who the commissioner is, you get very disparate opinions. But although now, because Newsom's been in office for so long, and before him it was Jerry Brown, all the commissioners are loaded to the left. They're all pro-criminal. They're all pro-criminal. But this particular batch that dealt with this case, they're almost all Newsom's guys. But the point I keep telling people is they work for Newsom. They're not civil servants. They are at will. He can fire them at any time. And so for him to say, oh, well, I don't have any authority over him, that's a load of crap. That's not true.
So does he have the authority to demand that they reverse their decision or anything like that?
We believe he does. Yes, we believe. Now, his office put out a statement earlier today, I think, saying that the governor has no legal remedy now that the parole board has made their decision.
Yeah, his statement's right here. The Board of Parole Hearings is an independent agency and made this decision. The governor asked for them to review its decision. The governor does not agree with the outcome and has they capitalize no authority to reverse this independent decision per state law.
So there's two things. First, and when I say we, I'm talking about the California DA's Association and the Criminal Justice Legal Foundation, which is chaired by my friend Anne Marie Schubert, the former DA of Sacramento. We just sent a letter about 2 hours ago. It's hot off the presses. We sent it to the state prison demanding that they reconsider their decision, and we gave them case law and authority that allows the executive staff at the state prisons to take another look at this decision based on a flawed analysis. We have case law right on point. We gave them the authority. So we did that. The DAs and this Criminal Justice Legal Foundation have done that to try and get them to stop it. But we also believe that the governor, as the executive, has the executive authority to reverse their decision, regardless of, the statement you read. He's the governor. All of these parole commissioners work for him. If he chose to, he could issue an executive order rescinding the release, firing all of these parole commissioners. I mean, think about it. Think about what he's done in other contexts, locking down the state.
Oh, right.
Having people arrested on beaches. So The idea that he can't do anything that's ridiculous. He is the chief executive of the state. He could do something. He's just choosing not to.